So, Ammon, you're looking a little drug out. Is everything going okay in the multimedia department?
Well, I mean, it's going all right. I'm just kind of a little frustrated, you know. I mean, the presentations that we've been getting from people who have been working with them in PowerPoint are good. The content's great. But they're just static. I mean, they're not something that I would expect what we're used to from like a product like Flash. So, I mean, is there anything that I can do or that we can do with PowerPoint 2007 to kind of help spice that up a little?
There is, and I understand, you know, you come from a very high-end environment where you're used to doing very professional quality things, and sometimes people really struggle with PowerPoint looking like it's done by an amateur, and you don't want that in any kind of environment, not to mention the one that you're working in. So PowerPoint 2007 is really nice because for the last couple of versions, they've really amped up the types of animations that you can do. So instead of just looking at bulleted text or having it appear, you can actually have it do a lot of different things. Now, I'm very careful with people to also tell them just because you can doesn't mean you should. So you got all of this spinning stuff, and you're like, wow, I'm dizzy now, but I don't know what I just saw. But as far as you're concerned, we can hopefully put some of those concerns to rest because PowerPoint offers what used to be only available in something like Flash, like scrolling text or emphasizing text. And it's of a quality that you really can't tell the difference. Now, I might get in some trouble with the true professionals on that, but when you do desktop presentations, the animation features, the way you can build them, is really approaching some of the things that have previously only been available in other applications.
Animating your slides is really a required part of making a presentation. It's no longer acceptable. I mean, that's a strong word, but it really isn't acceptable anymore just to have slides that flash up on the screen as one piece. There's a couple of reasons for that. Society has become more demanding. You know, we are the multimedia generation, and we don't want to see black and white handouts and just something show up. We want to see it flipping and spinning and all of that. However, you must also use a little bit of decorum in how much of this you do, because too much spinning and flipping takes time, and it also distracts from the message. So it does take a little bit of balance and a little bit of good judgment on how to create good animations. Well, in our particular presentation, we have several slides, and if you just look over at our slide pane for a second, we can see that we have 4 slides that are really just a large picture on the left with some text on the right. We need to zap those up a little bit. They're describing the types of people that you could communicate to. Because all of these were created based on a master, the place to add the animations is in the master itself. So the first thing I'll do is go to View, Slide Master, and make sure that I have the correct master selected. Everything that you do on a master applies to the slide. So instead of doing this animation 4 different times, I can do it once and have it automatically apply, as well as to any new slides I create that use this particular layout. So how do we create an animation? Well, everything on a slide could be animated, and an animation is how it gets onto or leaves a slide and what it does while it's on a slide. It does not have anything to do with what happens between slides. Between slides are known as transitions. So the first thing I would like to do is animate the picture. I have to select that picture, and then I would recommend going to the Animations tab so that we can see the different options that we have. Currently, along the left-hand side, you can see that it says there is no animation applied to this particular item. And when I click down, I can see that I can apply a few different types of animations. And you'll notice that the screen is flashing and it doesn't show anything because there is nothing in the placeholder. So when you are working with a master, there is a little bit of a limitation in the fact that I don't actually get to see a picture fade in or wipe or fly in. Instead of doing one of these built-in animations, I'm going to come down to Custom Animation. And this shows the old Custom Animation task pane on the right-hand side of the screen. Old as in, if you've used PowerPoint in the last couple of versions, you'll be familiar with this. Let me kind of break down the steps here. When you have a slide, you have to decide what you want to animate. And no, everything on the slide does not have to be animated. Then for each item, you need to determine what type of animation you want to create. Generally, the first thing you do is you create an appearance. How do you want this to appear on the slide? By selecting the picture, I can now go to the Add Effect drop-down, and you can see the different categories. There are entrance animations, animations that will add emphasis to an item. There are exits, how they leave a slide, and then something called a motion path, which is how it moves on the slide itself. We'll start with the basics, and we'll go to entrance, And we can see that there are blinds, box, checkerboards, diamonds, dissolve in, fly in, and so forth. Yours may be different because these do change. They're the most commonly used ones that show up on this list. What I would like is for this to dissolve in. And since that's on my list, I can simply click. We can see that over to the left-hand side, there's now a number 1 because all of the animations are numbered in order on the slide. There's a section called Modify the Dissolve In, and this is where we can tell it to start and possibly what kind of properties and the speed at which it should animate. For starting, your options are to have this animation start when you click on it. Or if there's another animation, you can have it start at the same time the previous animation starts. Or you can have it be sequential and say, whenever the previous animation is done, then start this one. Since this is the first one, I'm just going to say with previous, which is the same as do it right now. There are no properties for this particular animation, but there are speeds. Generally, I say that very fast is too fast. I usually like to choose medium, but again, you're going to have to determine that by what the content is and the design and feel of your presentation. So I've gone ahead and done the picture. That's going to show up first. Now I click on my title placeholder, and I'll add an animation there. We'll go back to Add Effect, Entrance, and this time I want to use one that's not in the list, so I'm going to choose More Effects. This opens a dialog box with all of the categories. I'll go back to the top where it includes everything from basic types of animations, coming down to subtle, followed by moderate, and as we get down towards the bottom, we have exciting. Now when you click on one of these, you can actually see how it works if you move the dialog box around. So you can preview. So I can see what a bounce will look like. There are a lot of these that you should really take a look at and become familiar with. Most of us will usually choose 2 or 3 that we like. I'm going to move to the medium category, and I'm going to choose Grow and Turn. And I'll go ahead and say OK. And now we can see that this has been added as the next animation. Notice that it says that it's happening on click. So I want to change that. I want this to happen after previous, after my picture comes in. And because it's text, I want to go ahead and change that speed to moderate as well. And now we can watch it happen. Something like so. Notice that what we're building in the pane is actually a playlist. Picture placeholder comes first, then enter title, the text comes next. If you need to modify this, you could select, and at the bottom there is a reorder where you can move them up or move them down. By default, of course, they are ordered in the way that you create the animations. If you want to play the animation, you can click play, and if you wanted to see it as actually a full slideshow view, you could do that as well. Since we're just in a master here, I'm not going to worry about doing that. I'm finished with this particular animation, so I'll go back to Slide Master tab, click Close, and that is now applied to all of these slides. When I look at the custom animation pane, we can see that it says layout, body, and that it has the particular animations in them, but that really everything is grayed out. Because things were applied in the masters, if I want to modify them, I would have to go back to the master itself. So that's the way to get most of your animations done very quickly. Let's move on to another kind of slide, though, which is the most common, a text slide. Text is the core of PowerPoint, but fact of the matter is it's also boring to just see a bunch of text up on a screen that's not doing anything. So animating, which used to be called a build several versions ago, is a way of not only keeping attention, but also not letting your audience get ahead. For this particular slide, I don't want them worrying about smart art, charts, and video while I'm trying to talk about graphics. So animation will help us do that. We go through the same process. We can add an effect, go to Entrance, and we'll go ahead and choose Grow and Turn. The primary reason I'm showing you this particular graphic is because there is a difference with text boxes. Different types of items have different animation options. So I will go ahead and change it to a medium speed, but then I want you to look down at our playlist. It's not just one item, it's one item followed by a little double down arrow. We can animate this placeholder as a whole, or we can animate all of the individual items inside of it. By clicking on the down arrow, I can now see each of my bullet points, and if I chose to do so, I could modify any one or all of those. I can go ahead and collapse that to get a little bit more user-friendly, if you will. And what I'd like to do now is actually work with how this text enters. When I play this, you'll see that the graphic comes in with graphics, clip art, photographs, drawing, shapes, all as one group. Then diagrams, hand-drawn, smart art as one group. Then charts. What I would prefer is that they come in one line at a time. That's when I want to use my animation settings. I can click on the drop-down for the particular animated item, and I can go to Effect Options. In this dialog box, there are a lot of things that you can do, including adding sounds. But for text, you might be interested in animating by letter, by word, or all at once. Now with grow and turn, by letter is okay, but I could have the whole word grow and turn. As an example, there's an entrance called a pinwheel, where it actually spins around. Doing that by letter is really annoying because it takes forever for each letter to come in, and you can spend 5 minutes waiting for 2 or 3 words to be put on. So take a look at that if it's something you want to modify. What I'm concerned with is the last tab, which says Text Animation, because this is a text box. And right now it says Group the text by first level paragraphs. From this drop-down, I can choose to do the whole text box as one item, to do all of the paragraphs at once, but each individual paragraph is an item. We saw it with first level bullet points, meaning a first level bullet point and all of the sub-bullets come in as one. But I would like to do it by second level. And I'll just say OK to show you how that actually shows up. Now graphics comes in by itself, then clip art, then photographs, and so on. So if I am a presenter, I am now able to talk about each one of these in line without somebody already knowing what the next item is going to be. It's something that you need to decide if it's appropriate for your particular purposes or not. Speaking about interesting things, let's go to our smart art graphic. It is a graphic, but the primary thing we need to change here is that by default, this will be animated all at once. And that means that the whole thing is going to come in at one time. If we go to the Animations tab, we use the drop-down. It currently says, of course, no animation. And we need to look at what some of the options are at the very top. Now, of course, fade is the first option that we have, but I'm looking at the subcategories there, as one object, all at once, or one by one. If we go through these, we'll see that as one object means the entire diagram. All of the components will, in this case, fade in together. Now, that may not be a big deal, but when you use things like growing or rotating or spinning, it means the entire rectangular diagram will come in at one time. That's different from all at once, which is where each individual item would spin on its own, not the whole diagram. And then one by one lets you do them, just like it sounds, one at a time. And we kind of preview that if we just pause over these options. Again, they're not going to be so dynamic because we are looking at just a fade in. But certainly with one by one, we can see the difference. That's the exact thing that we want to happen because the presenter is going to talk about each of these concepts one at a time. So we'll go ahead and click one by one. Now, while that's animating itself, we can go over to our custom animation pane and we can actually start thinking about how we want to customize it. I may want the funnel to fade in first, but I may want each one of those concepts to do something a little bit different. Again, this is something that has been done as a whole, but there are also individual objects. So I can click on the drop-down, and I can see that I have the placeholder. And if I pause over this, it says with previous, and it's actually the down arrow. The next one is a placeholder, and it's a shape. The next one is a placeholder, and that's the first one I want. At the very end, it says this is the one that says web-based content. So I'm going to click on that because I want to select it, and I want to modify it. Our button at the top of the task pane has changed, and it's not adding an animation. Now it's going to let us change the animation. I want to go to Entrance. I'll go to More Effects. And let's see if we can find one that we might like here. I'm thinking something that maybe spins. Let's choose a pinwheel. I'll say OK. And if we go ahead and play that, we can see that now what we have is a fade in with the first components, but a spin with the second, and then the others are still on fade. You would then go in and do this on each of the elements as you see appropriate. My point here is that even though you have one object that's initially worked together, you can go down into an element by element basis depending on how you create the animation. There's a couple more things that have individual settings, and one of those is an actual chart or graph. Everybody's seen charts where you see it and it's sitting up there for 30 minutes while some bean counter or accountant tells you why these statistics are important. So kind of like text, we need to liven it up. Well, this chart has already had an animation added. We also have the sound file. This was done when we went insert sound file. We said play it automatically. Remember that those things are added to the animation list. If I go to the content placeholder and click the drop down, I can go to its effects as well. Because this is a chart, it doesn't have something that says text animation. It has something that says chart animation. So we'll click on that tab. Similar to the diagram, we can have as one object, or because it is a chart, we can also do things by series, by category, by element in the series, or element in the category. I'm going to choose by series and say OK. Now you can see that it happens very quickly and it's really too fast to see anything. So let's slow this down. This is a good example of where very fast is way too fast. On medium, the components come in first, and then it comes in by series, which in this case means by colored column. We could have done all of the same color come first. We could have done all of sales, followed by all of services, followed by all of manufacturing, or we could have broken it down where each one of those bars came in one at a time. It all depends on how you want to present your information. Well, the last one I want to show you is kind of fun. Don't use it a lot in business presentations, but it has its purpose. We have this little target here with an arrow. And I'm actually going to select the arrow and move it up so it starts at the top of the slide. And what I would like is for it to kind of come down and be towards the middle of the bullseye. This is something called a motion path. We start it the same way by adding an effect, but this time we use the motion path category. There are a lot of very straight or linear ones. Have it diagonal down, diagonal up, come in from the left. And those are fine, but just for some fun, I want to show you I can draw a custom path. Straight lines, curves, free forms, I'm going to do a scribble. And I'm going to start with my little pencil, and I am going to take this thing all over this slide. I'm going to have it come down over here, come back around, maybe do a loop-de-loop, and end up about here. And then I'm going to double-click to make it stop. Zoom. Now, this is just kind of a fun demonstration of how this can be. I'm also going to slow it down a little bit. But what this gives you the opportunity to do is to make things move precisely on a slide the way that you want them to. You definitely have to practice a little bit with motion paths to get them to work the way that you want if you're drawing them by hand. But what a unique customization that you can do to your presentation. I'm just not sure I can say enough about smart art and animation and all of the fun things that you can do with PowerPoint. It really is what makes it an awesome program. It's what takes text on a written page, a handout that you could give somebody, and brings it to life. It's what multimedia is all about. So without having to know anything about really high-end stuff, you can create a nice feature that isn't just visually pleasing, but it also brings focus. That's what we're trying to do with animations, is draw attention to the appropriate parts of the presentation at the right time. You do have to play around with it a little bit, see exactly what you like, what you don't like, and what effects you're going to use. But once you do that, I think you'll get really comfortable and have a lot of fun with animation.